Hello, everybody. It's Graham Coath. It's Friday. It's midday, which means one thing only. It's Wow Ergonomics, brought to you by the wonderful back at Elkhuizen. Mr. Elkhuizen, or Stephen, can't be here today, though. He's in deepest, darkest Wales. He sent me a dot on my phone this morning to show me where exactly he was. And trust me, it's a long way from where I am. It's right on the edge. I hope he doesn't fall off. But wherever you are, Stephen, I hope you're having a lovely day. The sun is out for you, which is a wonderful thing. So instead, I have, or not instead, but in fact, even better than possibly, I have the wonderful Hana Gray here to join me this morning and keep me company. How are you, Hannah?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy because the sun is out, and that makes all the difference. This weather this year has been dreadful in the UK. It's been a write-off. We thought we were going to have great weather as we went into the start of the summer, and then it just disappeared. But enough of that. We picked up on you during the week because of a post that you wrote on LinkedIn. Perhaps you'd just like to start off by telling us a little bit about that post and also introducing yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Hannah Gray, and I'm the founder of the Office Management Group, which is essentially a consultancy and training and support academy for office managers. We have membership platforms. We do all sorts of different consultancy, from office move projects to health and safety to one-to-one coaching and training for offices and office managers, all with a view to helping them run their organisations better from that back office, executive support, administrative background. And we do group training courses. We've got our podcast, the Office Manager Diaries, all sorts of things, all about empowering, connecting and supporting the amazing office management professionals. The article was something that I have so many, when you run a business and when you have so many thoughts and ideas and the many different streams that we have in our organization, you often have things in draft. So you might just chuck notes down, and then at some point in your life, be it next week, next year, you come back to it and go, I'm going to finish this now. So the laptops piece has been something that's been on my mind for a while, because in LinkedIn feeds in particular, where there are very popular, 1,000+ likes and comments and things upwards of people working from home, or people, there was one I saw a couple of months ago where someone was talking about how it's great to sit and work from a park bench and be in the sunshine. And exactly, eye rolling. And it was the same thing with me. I was like, it's lovely, but only do that for an hour at most in the day and just get your fresh air. And if you can, take some other ergonomic equipment with you, because it's that, as I wrote in the article, it's not good to use a laptop other than for what it was designed for, which is what the article was around. It's entitled, "It's Time to Stop Using Laptops Incorrectly." And there was another stream that I scrolled through a couple of weeks before I published the article on Monday, where a lady was talking about HR business partners and, I suppose, trying to educate people more on what they do. It wasn't about the laptop, but she did a selfie. And in that, her arms are, her elbows are down. So blood circulation is going this way, not the way we want it to our hands. She's using a laptop without a keyboard, without a mouse. So, she's hunching, and it just, grinded my gears kind of thing. And I was like, right, pick up that draft and those notes and write this article and get it out there. So that's how it came about, and that's how you found us.
I'm so pleased you do it. I mean, it's something, as I said to you just before we came on, it's something that we've been banging on about right from the start of this show. Back of Elkhuizen, if you don't know, are manufacturers of laptop stands, keyboards, mice, and ergonomic solutions that enable people to work safely with laptops.
Yeah.
And yet, people just don't get it. If you look at the figures for laptop use against sort of desktop use now, I mean, the majority of people in the world are now buying laptops. In fact, in several houses, we know that people have got up to 6 laptops.
Yeah, and or tablet devices, which are just as bad if you're on them for.
Oh yeah, and I'll include that with it as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because we've all got one of those, we are all potentially going to be looking down at some point during the day anyway, because we're going to answer our phone, we're going to text on our phone. We're probably, if we travel in anywhere on a train somewhere or whatever, we're probably going to look down using that. So the time that we're then set up to do some work somewhere, we do not want to be sat looking down again, typing onto a device which, as you say, wasn't ever designed to be used for long-term work.
No.
It was designed to be a very portable solution. And back in the early days, because I'm that old, back in the early days of laptops, it was only really posh salespeople that
It
had
was
laptops, or
that were
directors that
traveling.
had laptops that were
Yeah.
traveling, and it
Yeah.
was normally so that they could do a PowerPoint presentation to someone at the other end.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it was for.
Yeah.
But as
Work
soon as
on a
they got back to the
plane
office,
or yeah.
But as soon as they got back to the office, they'd be on a main size computer again. So it's the difficult bit is that even though some people actually know the message that this isn't the way to work, and even if they do potentially in their home offices or whatever use stuff, they're not showing people that on social media.
Yeah.
How do we get people to start understanding that it's important to think about what you are sharing image wise or whatever, because actually that has an impact in terms of what other people think is right or wrong?
Yeah. I think, well, it's a whole big piece. So people share things on social media and it's very personal, and I have views. I think LinkedIn, for example, is very much a corporate business platform. And so when people share pictures of their kids on holiday and they're just talking about their holiday and it's not business related at all, I'm quite anti that, because I don't want my 13,000 followers, and I know you've got, above 20,000. I don't want them to see that much of my life. I'm happy to share little glimpses here and there, but it's very personal to let people in your life that much. And I do believe there are boundaries that get crossed a lot with LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram personal accounts. So I suppose it's trying to understand the difference, that this is a business platform and we're all trying to influence and support and educate people when we put posts out there, or clickbait, as some people will be doing. And we know there are people that are purely doing it for that purpose. When it comes to people doing photos for social media of their own setup, if they're not educated themselves, then it has to go right back to their employers, who are the ones that are responsible for educating staff on how to set themselves up correctly. This is particularly here in the UK, the law with the HSE is the training and the self-assessment of ergonomics, of DSE, display screen equipment, and setting yourself up correctly at your desk. And that's not, when I started doing DSEs, as I'm sure you know, Graham, people would go, oh, we just have to sit straight and we're done. And I find it really interesting because it's so much more than that. It is very much about the human body and what is neutral and natural for our bodies, and in our relaxed state, what is best for us to then apply to working at a desk, working with computers, working with our phones, whatever else it might be. And so for me, the responsibility has to sit much higher. So if I was the person's office manager, the lady that wrote this article about HRBPs, and I saw that photo, I would be approaching her and I would be speaking and realizing, well, we've got a little bit of an issue here, because you've just posted something, on behalf of our company on social media, and we haven't supplied you with a keyboard or a mouse, or we have, and you're not using them. And we're promoting bad health, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. We talk a lot about health and well-being and culture. That's not good health for somebody to be sat at their desk all day like that. So it's difficult because you can't control or influence what everybody's putting out there, back to my first point, because that wasn't the point of her topic and her post anyway. It was completely different. So how do you educate people? Well, I suppose I could have replied on the comments, but it would have come across a little bit abrupt, I guess.
Yep.
And perhaps a little bit self-promotional, and I'm not really the kind of person to do that. Maybe I should be. I haven't even tagged her in the article. I've just tagged the link. So whether she's seen it or not, I don't know. But it comes back to the company, and it always does, which is why the legal requirement sits with the employers. For people like our audience, office managers, and anyone that's watching now, if you run a company, if you're part of the company health and wellbeing program, culture, HR, it sits with you. And if it doesn't directly, then you have an impact and an influence to be able to go and voice that and say, people aren't using these devices correctly. And we are seeing, as it said in my article and on the HSE's latest stats, we are seeing musculoskeletal disorders increase and have already increased. And we're going to see the longer term impact of that over the next sort of 3 to 10 years, where youngsters in particular who have essentially been born into tech, you know, so they may have had a computer when they were 12 or 13 years old to do their schoolwork, and or an iPad perhaps, and then they're using computers far more than you and I would have done at school. We had like one ICT lesson a week for an hour where I used a computer, and we did have one at home as well. And then students at uni are going and sitting at these tiny desks or on sofas to do their dissertations and things, and then they're going straight into work, and yet again being given a laptop. During COVID, they would have sat in their bedrooms most likely because they were back at their parents or in house shares, tiny desks or beds, working all day. You know, we're going to see the impact on the younger generations coming into the workforce in the next 5 to 10 years with these issues. So it's a huge topic, and it's not just one where I think
it's a huge topic, and let me try and unpack some of that, because you know you've covered a lot of ground there. First of all, I just want to say hi to some of the people that are listening. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, it's a great subject. It's one that we're going to cover again and again and again on the show, because that's what we're all about. Wow Ergonomics. There we go. Did I say show? Yes, I did. Why? Are you questioning that? Come up in my face.
making more showy.
Yeah, the hunchback of laptop dame, as it were. I love that. I've started ironing my shirts with a wok. Do you think my posture is a bit too hunched? Yeah, thank you very much. Always, as ever, Richard Urridge, our in-house reporter there. Yeah, let's start unpacking that. I think one of the things for the start is there are a lot of excuses why someone could say, actually, the reason I did this, and this is okay for me to demonstrate this, is, and one of them is an ergonomic principle, and it's actually something I wrote about for an ergonomist this week, which is that the ergonomic principle of time. And it's always an excuse, which is that, but I'm only doing that for a minute. Yeah.
But a minute becomes 10.
Yeah.
10 becomes 20, you know.
But the problem, yeah, exactly. But the problem I have with that in terms of photographs, etc., is that a photograph is a capturing of something in time, and it has no movement around it. Now, different maybe if, as part of a video, you're on a laptop and you're doing something on a laptop for a minute, and then you move to doing something else. You could potentially argue I'm showing that I just was getting some data out of a laptop for a minute or so, and that could be fine. But when you take a still image of something, you are potentially putting up there that this is something that you do on a regular basis, and the voyeur of that doesn't necessarily understand how long that's for. So unless you're explaining within that piece, here I am using a laptop, and normally I use the laptop with a keyboard and laptop stand, etc. But I was just posing with the laptop, etc. So this is fine. Then that's okay, because you're explaining it within the criteria of time. So I think that's one excuse, and the other excuse is that people say, well, it's a photo. It's a publicity photo, and the important part is people seeing my face. Going back to what you were saying about part of me thinks yes, we should be picking up on companies, but we should also be picking up on photographers that do headshots as well, and educating them to go, well, actually, if you're going to do headshots, just make somebody aware, if they're doing that piece, that they are putting over a principle. I don't know. I think it's so difficult, because the photographer will be like, but it's about reference points as much as anything else. And what I would love to see is, if you go onto any of the sort of free to use photo galleries that you can use in things like Canva or anything else now, the thousands of photos that you will get of somebody using a computer typically will have lots and lots and lots of images of people using them incorrectly.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
So I think maybe part of it is we've got to start changing those reference points at that point to go, actually, we need kind of a campaign on this to go, we need to start seeing people using computers properly, even if it's like free photography, etc. So that actually, people are starting to put that into posts where they want to show a picture of someone using the computer.
Stock images. And I mean, it was great for me for my article, the stock image that I got, that was a Canva image that's on there, because the person on it is using it incorrectly and is putting her hand on her back.
It's the easiest thing to find, right?
It is. It's far easier than trying to find somebody with, like, I'm going to show you. You'll know
it's a dolphin mouse.
Penguin one, yeah.
Oh, penguin mouse.
This is me. This is my ergonomic kit and setup. I'm in a proper chair with a lumbar pump and all that jazz. And most people are sitting in their dining room chairs. I would not want to work in that way around one of those all day.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you're right. The stock images, we need to contact Canva, don't we, and start a campaign to get some better images with ergonomic equipment in.
Totally. The other thing is, you mentioned DSE, and obviously, I was a DSE assessor. I trained a lot of people in how to do DSE assessments for a number of years. But I mean, one of the problems with HSE, DSE, etc., is that actually, you mentioned the legal piece, and I'm pretty certain there's still hundreds of companies out there that don't even know that there's any kind of legality around it. But also, a lot of it isn't regulation, it's recommendation based. So although you are meant to do an assessment to determine whether or not your staff are actually comfortable and give them some guidance there, it's guidance, and it's not necessarily saying to people this is right or this is wrong. And there's no real guide stick there.
No, I mean, there's a schedule of minimum requirements, though, when it comes to chair and lighting and things like that, which are in the legislation. But again, people don't, I mean, when I do health and safety audits with clients, so many don't even know that, they don't even know what DSE is, first and foremost.
Oh, we're talking about display screen equipment assessments, by the way, if people want to know what that stands for.
Yeah, the acronyms galore in these. But a lot of people don't know about it. But then sometimes, when, probably like you have in your time doing DSE assessments, I see some people for some of my clients, and I say to them, have you ever had a DSE assessment before? And they're, in their 40s and 50s, and they've worked for some huge corporate companies, and they're like, no, never had anything like this before. This is amazing. And I love doing them, because especially as an office manager or facilities manager in my career, you have so many people that you go to, and you simply just lift their chair and get them to the right neutral height, and they're like, oh my God, this is incredible. And some of them have been tearful with me, because I fixed, like, there was one guy, this is one of my favorite stories. His name was Paul, and he was a trader in a private German investment bank that I worked for. And he got the mick taken out of him when I was doing his DSE, because all the traders around, mostly men, and it's all a bit lad kind of thing in that environment. And we went through, and I said, any aches or pains? And he was like, my it's his right pinky, actually, my right pinky hurts. And it's because when you're trading on a Bloomberg keyboard, a lot of the day you're enter.
Yeah.
He had RSI in his right pinky, and they were really ripping it, like, because they'd overheard. And I spent so much time researching to see if we could get an ergonomic Bloomberg keyboard, and we managed to find one. And he wrote me a really heartfelt email. I was like, I know it, like, I think he said, like, I sound like a pussy or something, whatever. But he was like, I know I sound a bit rude, but you actually have really helped me. And I'm so grateful, because that pain was just bugging me, and it's got so much better, because it's not always preventative, or it's not always cure. It's kind of preventing something from getting worse when you're talking about doing the assessments. And there's so many little stories here and there from people where you make such a difference to the pains and the things and the feelings that they have whilst they're working. So it's really important, not just because there are elements that are legal requirements, but because you are actually asking staff to work on something that carries a risk, much like construction workers and manual handlers and drivers. Would you ask them to go and do a job and not train them in how to lift safely or how to drive properly and do deliveries, or use a forklift truck. Yet here we are in offices, or not anymore, asking our staff to use our equipment, and we're not training them in how to use it. I don't see that there's any difference personally. I think
Yeah.
we
Where do you think the main areas or issues around sort of DSE and sort of taking up good advice come? Because for me, I'm not sure that it's necessarily in the office, because I think in the office most of the time there may well be an office manager, and there may be someone overlooking, and they may be giving advice, or they should be. If they haven't, they can contact someone like you.
Mm,
But potentially it's where people are working from home, or working in a hybrid way. And I would have to say one of the main areas that I think it is as well is people who have a very transitory lifestyle but are
yeah,
working with equipment. And I think that's the hardest thing to regulate. And I think that's where from my personal point of view, I feel like the kind of exercise of doing an assessment is
mm,
potentially wrong, only in as much as I think what we do need to do more and more in that situation is educate
mm,
self,
yeah,
and enable people to understand what it is that they should be looking out for, and what it is that they could potentially do to make it better. In other
yeah,
words, we should be almost training everybody to be
yeah,
able to carry out a DSE assessment for themselves,
yeah,
because if I'm working in a coffee shop somewhere, as part of my daily routine, and people might say, oh, yeah, but again, back to the time thing, oh, yeah, but I pop into the coffee shop and just do a little bit of work. I've
mm,
seen people in coffee shops 2 or 3 hours later,
mm,
five espressos in, they've been sat there for the last few hours, typing away, and in very poor ergonomic conditions.
mm. Yeah, so that is why I suppose the legal bit, because it's tightened up and they've done some more work because of hybrid working on DSCs as well. And I suppose that's why they say the training and self-assessment, the two-pronged approach to the law is the requirement. I agree. There's lots of computer programs and software where you can send it to your staff and they can go on and do the training, but it becomes quite a tick box exercise. So for me, every single employee that came through our doors when I was the office manager or operations manager, I would sit them into an induction program. So we talk about general health and safety, but we had a few slides and we would bring one of the office chairs in and show them just the very, 2-3 basic things of getting the chair at the right height, which is the first thing we always start with, and then doing the gap behind the knees and the lumbar support and some of those bits of detail there, and do the slides then about bringing the equipment to you and that kind of stuff. So we always started from their very first day in the office with an induction that included that, so the education piece, and then we invited them to assess a week or two later. Because if you give them that assessment on their first day, they're like, yeah, I'm fine, everything's fine, and they haven't got used to that environment yet. In terms of the other piece, so when you take people out of the office, like we said, this applies to mobile phones and everything as well. So I know, having worked for some colleges and education providers, but also I used to work in an estate agent's office, and they still have them now, computers. So many in these sort of smaller businesses where you don't think of the office environment because their services are different to like a typical office environment, are not doing it. But yet estate agents now are on the computers most of the day. Yes, they might go out and value, and there'll be the valuers, but the salespeople are on those computers most of the day, as are the mortgage brokers. No one is looking at those kind of, small entity estate agents and training them. No one's looking at even the delivery drivers who are doing this a lot of the day, scanning and things because they use their mobiles or a tablet or whatever it might be. The subject of ergonomics is huge, and DSEs, and I think 100% I agree that it starts with the education and the understanding to sort of where I started from, about what is neutral and relaxed. Like, we know that if I put my head like this, I'm pulling so much more weight because my head is like 4 pounds on average in terms of weight on my spinal cord. So every time I go forward and forward and forward, and if you're watching this, just do it and feel like, tune into your body and feel the pull on your spinal cord. It's also this, hence my upright mouse. I'll just stand up for a second so you can see, but we walk and stand like this. So our hands are here. And the second that we go like that to mouse and keyboard, and again, if you're online, do it. So you start like this and then really tune into how your body and your muscles feel. Do like that and see if you can feel the twist here. You should, otherwise.
Yeah, because the ulnar and the radius are actually twisting over the top of each other.
Yeah, they're interlinking. So this is the more natural state, hence why we start to see keyboards coming in that are arched and the upright mouse. We designed, well, we didn't do it, Graham, but someone designed a lot of this equipment wrong many years ago. And it's just simple things like that, like educating people on why things start to ache, why if you're working like this with your keyboard arm's distance away from you, that your shoulders and your neck are going to hurt after a while. Why, if you're sitting in a dining room chair, your lower back's going to hurt because it won't have lumbar. What were dining chairs designed for?
Well, what were dining room chairs? Actually, this is a brilliant question. And if anyone wants to answer this one, I know we've got some other ergonomists on the line. What were dining room chairs designed for? Because they weren't even designed to eat properly at a dining room table, were they? Because they're the wrong height for that. You know, typically, if you sit in the dining room chair, you actually sit at the wrong height for the table and your arms are like this on most of them. So what were they designed for? Absolute rubbish, most dining room chairs, I would say. Really, really. Oh, Hannah, have you frozen? I think she has. Oh, there we go. I'm just going to take, whilst Hannah is hopefully going to come back, I'm going to take a few of the comments. So, yeah, Philip John said, training and education in layman's terms, getting people to understand that they can experiment to find their personal preferences. And then Chris takes 30 seconds to set up a standard keyboard and mouse. He did it in a coffee shop yesterday. Yeah, absolutely. Dining room, chair is too low, desk too high. All the time, completely. I think those restaurants where you sit on the floor cross-legged, that's probably even better. Actually, I can't say that that's wrong. 30 seconds to set up a keyboard and mouse, but why don't people do it? Is it because they haven't got the equipment with them, or is it because they think they don't need to, or is it because they think they will look uncool in doing it? Don't know. I don't know where my guest has gone. It's an absolute shame because we were having such a great conversation. I can carry on talking and hopefully we'll get her back. I might even message her across on the old LinkedIn and see if we can get her back. Are you able to come back in? There we go. And all my time doing Wow Ergonomics. This is one of the first times ever that this has happened. Anyway, folks, so we've been talking this morning about DSE. We've been talking about, in particular, the use of laptops. What do you think on the question of how laptops are shown across social media? How do we make those changes? How do we get people to stop showing us showing images of them using a laptop incorrectly? And with that, I can add Hannah back in again. There she is.
Sorry. I was like, is that mine or yours? And then I got this message from Sky going, you're down. And I was like, why? There we
Bless
go.
them. Bless them. Bless modern technology. I carried on, as you do. And Chris was just saying about the dining room chairs that we were talking about just before. The chair is too low, desk is too high, which is always wrong. And actually, not just that, a little tip here, a lot of you buy desks for home and you've got drawers underneath where the legs go. Stop it. Don't do it. Please. Right? It might look lovely, but it means you end up sitting too low. And then you can't work out why, you can't get comfortable because you're sat low, but everything's up there. And you're having to kind of stretch and hunch in order to use the desk. Glad to see you too, Ryman. Always lovely to see you.
I think that was my point. My question, which I ask to people when I'm doing DSEs, especially if they are virtual and they're in a dining room chair, is I would say to them, because I'm a bit of a bugger like this, what is your dining room chair for? And they say, eating. I said, how often do you sit in it to eat? 2 or 3 times a day. And how long are you there for to eat? 10, 20 minutes, half hour or so, if it's a nice dinner. Yeah. And how many hours a day are you sitting at the moment? 8 to 10, depending on how busy I am at work.
Just don't.
There we are.
Just really don't. Richard's saying, I think we're so mobile now, working at home, in the office, on the road, that it's difficult to maintain the right approach across all those different environments. It is. It is. And there's always, just coming into that point, I think it's great that we have more and more lightweight, flexible solutions that you can take with you. However, we are by that nature implying that we're expecting people to carry more stuff with them in order to get their ergonomics right wherever they go. I'd like to see as well, again on my high horse here today, but I'd like to see more emphasis put on ergonomics from sort of collaborative working spaces as well. If you're going to hire out your space for people to come in and work, provide them with the equipment that they need. Then they don't need to travel with it. So if you're going to one of these cohabitive working spaces or whatever, ask them the question: can I get a laptop stand and keyboard while I'm there? Can I get an ergonomic mouse to work with while I'm there? So actually, I don't have to carry that. It's from a business point of view, if you are one of those places, what a great little value add. You can actually
Life are one of my first clients in like 2016, 2017. And I said to them, because you're providing the desks, there is some sort of grey area here that's not covered by the law at present as to who is responsible for the equipment. You're covering the desks and the chairs. And so just do, like you say, a value add, just do a little bit of a training guide on how to set themselves up in the chair, what the different controls are in terms of DSE. And they now do have laptop stands available, they're limited supply for their members, as they call them, to use. So Work Life have got some good guidance there and are doing it. But We Work and the Office Group and all those others need to get on that, because, hiring out your spaces, you need to help people use them correctly and safely.
Yeah, absolutely. That can become, as you say, kind of part of the culture, part of what you're actually offering out there, and proving that you're actually really concerned with people's well-being. Philip says, lots of people that know they're doing the wrong things but ignore it until they have a problem. I think that's life in general, is it not? I think lots of you only have to look over a social media platform like LinkedIn just to hear that people go, well, I should lose weight, or I should exercise more, or I should do this, but I don't. And then they have a problem. And then at that point in your life, you start making changes because you suddenly realize, actually, this lifestyle isn't right. So that means that part of this actually does kind of come into lifestyle choices as well, and maybe again, because I love the fact that we've got things again like DSE, and we can, office managers, you can take this on, etc. But actually selling it to people, right? Just walking back from the fact that it's kind of a health and safety thing for a minute. Yeah. Selling it to people's a completely different thing.
It is,
right? And maybe sometimes what we need to do is try and be a little bit more creative with that as well, and go, how do we actually sell this to people? If for example we went to the makers of Prime, right? And we've all heard of Prime, haven't we? Those bottled drinks that are meant to be particularly good at hydrating you, etc. Where they managed to convince waves of young people to drink Prime, and make drinking a drink cool again, a non-alcoholic drink cool. They must know something about getting to people's psyche. I think on some of these things, some of these areas, we need to kind of talk to some of the people behind some of the cool things as well, and go, how do we get into people's lifestyle idea that this is a lifestyle choice, and actually I'm kind of cool if I do this properly, because that's do you agree with what I'm saying?
So I've had this thing, but it's just time and how for so many years now, and I spoke to some other DSE assessors about it years ago, and they said, when you're ready, tell us and we'll do it. It's got to be in the education system for me.
Yep. We've said that before on this show.
Like 5, 6, just, little intros about how to, time limits on devices and, the hour kind of max in one position, that kind of very simple stuff, right the way through to university, so that at university there are workshops as part of their course that continue to teach them how to set themselves up. It's got to be ingrained like sex education has.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing. Every time I bring that subject up, those that are in education, so we haven't got the time or the money to do it.
Yeah.
Because we have to focus on certain things.
So did you see that there's a I haven't looked at it for a while, actually. It was a couple of years ago. California started to do this in education. They started to put ergonomics into the education, the curriculum. I need to check in on it, actually, as I say, because I've not thought about it for a while. But they were the first that I saw to start building ergonomics and the use of computers into their education system. So
that's really interesting. I might go and research that afterwards. I think I personally think it's an incredibly valid point. I do think that there may be, the likelihood of it happening in the UK, it would need to come from people like yourself and me and whatever actually getting involved in education. And one of the problems I found is that actually I've offered that service in the past, and people and certain people within education are like, yeah, I'm really, really keen on it, but then they're under-resourced in terms of actually trying to organise it at their end. So it's like never happens, Yeah.
It's just got to go on the curriculum. It has to just be like learning maths, like learning science, like learning English. It needs to be, not as intensive, clearly, but
should it be part of teacher training
as well? Yeah, absolutely. Because teachers are using them as well, and teachers will be taking laptops home to do marking and things nowadays. And they were in COVID times doing webinars constantly and using their laptops all day, every day. So train them, but also train and educate.
Well, a lot of teachers get a really poor rap when it comes to sort of ergonomic solutions, because let's face it, if you're teaching 5-year-olds, you're crawling about on the floor most of the day.
True. Yeah, maybe we need to look at the age range. Maybe 5's too young, but I know so many kids that are getting iPads all day, every day at the age of like 3 and 4. So parents as well. It needs to be part of the parent educate. Everybody. This impacts everybody now. Technology and VDUs, visual display units, are everywhere. So we're using them now.
We're using them now. Fortunately, it's right in front of me, and it's I can sit fairly upright to do this, which is a good thing. But again, actually, can I ask you a question about that as well? I mentioned trying to make it cool, but also one of the things that I've done in the past is actually trying to use a bit of humor in order to sell this as a concept as well. And there's certain things that we can do with that, because you mentioned. You mentioned, I think before you came on, you were on Zoom meetings or whatever in the morning. Like for me, perhaps putting stuff out there to people that go, you really don't want that double chin look, do you? Actually getting into their kind of overall sort of ideology about the fact that they don't want to look bad. Actually can sometimes really change people's perspective. And I'll give you a story now. I once did a set of DSEs over an IT company, and it was all young lads mainly that were working there, sort of 18, 19-year-olds, and they were all sat like this and really, really slouching, etc. And when you first talk to them about how they're sitting or whatever, the response you get is, yeah, but I'm young. I don't have a problem with my back, etc. As soon as I mentioned to all of them that it might actually impact their sex life, they sat up. Yeah. I think sometimes you got to. What I'm saying is you've got to actually hit people with a sense of where it might actually make some odds to them. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Teach kids to touch type.
I agree, Philip.
Yeah.
I was taught how to touch type because I did a secretarial course at college, but so many kids are not taught, and they're typing, and if you're not, we call them peckers. If you're not touch typing, you're doing this, and then you're doing this, and then you're
Yeah,
right.
hunting and pecking is a technique on the old keyboard.
Yeah.
I think actually that's a very good point. Teaching people to touch type is, why wouldn't you want to teach people to touch type? In fact, the amount of times when I did a DSE, I actually recommended that someone went on a touch typing course as part of it, because they couldn't touch type. They were looking down there, and it doesn't matter what kind of keyboard you give them.
Yeah.
If you give them a split keyboard where it's more raised up, if they're still going to look down at it, they're going to look down at it. So it's only going to change when they can actually type. But the main thing, if you're a business, think about this as well. If you're a business and you've got a member of staff that can't touch type, think how inefficient they are.
Mm-hmm. Speed.
Speed.
85 words per minute I got up to in my prime.
Oh, you beat me. I think I'm still at 80 words a minute, but it's
good.
It's not bad. No, it's not bad. I won't tell you what my shorthand score was, because I can't even remember any of it these days. But it doesn't really matter, because you can just dictate to things these days. And but there again, there's another thing. Why do you have to type all day long? You don't necessarily have to type. You can use your voice.
There's audio. It's funny, isn't it? Because actually, with that and what you were just saying, and me sort of feeling some shoulder pain because I've been on the road a week this week, but it just occurred to me, because I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll book a massage for this weekend. So many businesses are getting masseurs in, massage people in, to, as a perk and as a benefit and as well-being. Why not go further back than having to try and cure the shoulder pain and relieve the stress? Because I believe poor ergonomics leads to stress as well, because we all know, anyone that's ever had a frozen neck, shoulder, or bad back pain, it is debilitating. And, I had it when I was younger, frozen shoulder, because I had so many issues when I was younger with musculoskeletal stuff. But I couldn't even get in and out of the car. I couldn't cross the road safely because I was like, couldn't turn. So it needs to be ingrained in health and well-being, much like bringing the massage person in or people in to give you those benefits. It can be part of that. And like you say, I think you can make it fun. And I think instead of someone coming, if you have a DSE assessor who comes in and who is stuffy and who is just moving the equipment for them without explaining why, and that, our eyes are naturally, like you and I are both looking down because we probably have got our screens positioned correctly. If everyone online looks straight ahead for me and then drops your eyes just about 30 degrees, kind of how you would naturally read your phone or a book, feel the difference in your muscles in your eyes. It's because looking straight ahead is not our neutral, relaxed state. So if you give people, like we've said a few times throughout this, the information, the education as to why, we're not doing it because it's particularly scientific or it's some genius person that's come up with all these recommendations. It's because it's our bodies and what we want and how we need to feel and be relaxed. So take it back from the masseuse and all these other benefits. Give people a healthy working environment through educating them on how to use their equipment correctly.
Yeah.
And you do the perks if you want on top.
One kind of sort of final question for you, which is that, with regards to doing workplace assessments, sort of ergonomic type assessments, etc., do you feel that it should just stay there? Because, personally, when I was doing it, I tried to pan train across lots of different disciplines, and the downfall of it for me, one of the main downfalls I saw was that it wasn't holistic enough. And we weren't actually picking up on enough things that could actually be the issue there. So for me, I would love to see those kind of assessment and educational pieces be much broader, so that actually they do cover ergonomics, but they also cover, mental health. They also cover specific learning difficulties. They also cover, even things like what is it that people are putting in their bodies, because ultimately, if you go into a place and you find that somebody's living off six sausage rolls and 2 donuts a day that they get from the fast food place around the corner, that their health is going to suffer partly because of their diet, and and things like headaches and concentration and all of those things may be in part attributed to their posture, but it might actually be to do with what they're eating, etc. as well. So do you see a need for it to broaden or be broader?
I think it's very difficult because, so with the equipment, if you're supplying it and you're asking people to use it, you have the right and you have the requirement to educate people on how to use that safely. Like my example with the forklift truck earlier. When you start going into personal questions like what are you putting in your bodies, to use your phrase, it can feel like some people will take that very personally. It can feel like a little bit of an attack. I think absolutely where there's medical or disability or mental health elements around that very sensitively and delicately, I do agree it should be taken into account. Like on some assessments I've done and seen in the past, we've taken their body mass index and their height and weight and things like that, because when you're trying to then find suitable equipment, more really the chair, you take all of that into account, so it does become quite scientific at that point. But I think the issue is workplaces are in danger of becoming a little bit of a nanny state and kind of something that isn't work anymore place. So I agree that it's needed, and we have like health coaches that are on our platform that go into businesses and do talks and things for them. But as an employee, as an office manager, would I be comfortable sitting there doing an assessment and saying to somebody, what do you eat and what do you drink every week? How many units of alcohol? I wouldn't be, I don't think. It's too personal. I think if you're having that on a secure assessment online where you remove the person, like me, even as a consultant externally, I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable asking that. It just feels a little bit too personal. And I think we can only really educate. We can't really intrude and invade in that space. So I agree we need to do more, but there is such a fine line for me, and the cost and the time that it takes for businesses to do those extra things is huge. And it's very important because it can impact employees and it can then therefore impact the productivity of the staff. But there is a real balance. And I think we're still trying to figure out exactly where that sits. Financial health as well. We've had people saying, should we be doing more about, educating people on their finances? And so many women do not have savings. So many women do not invest. Most men do. The stats, when you look into it, are huge. Well, how can we do more on that? But without getting too personal, without trying to feel like we're managing their entire lifestyle, because actually they come here to do a job. We pay them if they do it and they do it well. That's the relationship. So yeah, I think probably
it is a very difficult thing, isn't it? As Philip says, I understand what he's saying there, which is if you make the subject too big or too broad, then people may have problems in actually taking the information that you're giving back. It might be information overload and they struggle with that. But in a similar vein, I could not have solved some of the problems that I solved for people without asking those questions about diet, or without knowing, for example, that somebody's dyslexic, or because actually that may have been the main thing that was actually causing all of the other issues. And we know when it comes to people's health and well-being, things are interpolated. So it's not a simple case of, actually a lot, and you will see that in doing sort of DSE, that sometimes, a mental health, someone's mental health is impacted by their physical health, or vice versa. So it can't necessarily be that you can extrapolate just one thing from a person. It's about knowing who's an expert. It's about signposting. It's about people that are taking part in these processes being more educated, so that they know where their expertise stops and where else they need to be able to go if they discover something. I think it's education all the way through.
It is, and it's just where does that line get drawn with employers? And it's an interesting world, that's for sure. And I do still think there's a lot more that employers should be doing, and the DSEs is just the most basic, scratching the surface start to it. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for coming and joining me with this conversation today, Hannah. If you haven't checked out Hannah's profile on LinkedIn, which includes that little post that she did on the laptop use and why we need to change our habits, do go and check it out now. We will be back, of course, same time, same place next week with Stephen returning. Until then, this has been Wow Ergonomics. Check out previous episodes at wowergonomics.com. Stay safe